eavesdrop the message, they can't actually get using the same key. You need the same key to decrypt to get back the original message. Okay? And the typical input block size is about 8 bytes, 16 bytes. So 8 bytes is about 8 characters. Okay? So you can encrypt about 8 to 16 characters at a time. But if you have more than that, of course you have more than that, you can use any supported block cipher mode of operation. I'll give a brief description about these later. Okay. And since this talk is about lightweight cryptography, so what is lightweight? So lightweight, according to this document, the ISO IEC, this one is the FDIS version, 29192-1. Lightweight cryptography is cryptography for implementation in resource-constrained environments or devices. So the constraints include chip area, meaning that if you have a device, the area is small, so you want to implement something into a small area. And then it has issues such as energy consumption. So maybe the device operates on battery. So if your cipher consumes a lot of battery, maybe it will last, I don't know, maybe a few hours. So if you have a lightweight cipher, maybe it can last more than that, maybe a few days. Memory size, similar to chip area, and then the communication bandwidth and execution time. Okay, these are some of the constraints where lightweight cryptography is suited for such environment. And lightweight cryptography is not intended to be used for everything, meaning that we have, I think you know AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, we have AES for that. So lightweight cryptography is for very specific environments where we have constraints such as these. Okay. And so why do we need lightweight? So in the past, this is a photo of a computer back then. It's maybe the size of a room. In 1941. So back then we have computers which are very large. Okay. And then after that we have the computers and Mac. And then now we have personal computers. This one is the iMac. And then now, and then going into the future, we have devices such as now we have smartwatch, and tiny devices, RFID, where all these things have limited in their hardware resources. So going forward, some people term this as IoT. Now it's the buzzword, Internet of Things. So the future landscape of IT is ubiquitous. So almost everything that exists in this planet maybe is connected somehow. Okay. And those are the constraints which I repeat here. Limited area, they have issues about the computational power, battery and memory and such. So in this IoT, why can't we use AES? We already have AES. It has been in existence since the year 2000. So why not use AES? Yeah, AES is great for general purpose. You can use to encrypt your files, communication between in your networks. But due to its size, to implement AES in hardware, it consumes some space. So it's not generally fit into such resource-constrained devices. However, AES is good for protecting long-term data, because AES we have it can support up to 256-bit keys, and for lightweight normally we have 80-bit keys, and maybe maximum we can go is 128-bit keys. Okay. And if you have any question, you can just please interrupt me. Okay. And even nowadays, I take the example of RFID. it has been used now, and typical. This is just an example I took from this paper. The average power consumption for such devices is about 30 microwatts, and the GE gate equivalent is around 10,000 GEs. So you need to fit everything in this 10,000 GEs, for example. So your cipher has to be less than that. So, for example, it has been used by Levi's and Marks and Spencer because RFID it's like a sticker you can put on your clothes. So it's for inventory. Okay, so you know in your shop how many stocks are left. You know whether it has been bought. So which one people bought more. So these two companies, Levi's, Marks and Spencer, they have implement RFID technology, and also the Swedish Transport Administration. They also use RFID to tag their assets. The trains they transport goods, so they tag those using RFID as well. And then the U.S. Department of Defense, they also use RFID to tag their assets, for example, their weapons and things such as that. Those are the links if you want to see more details. And also the Department of Energy in the US, the Argonne National Laboratory, they also use RFID technology to track, I think, nuclear, something to do with nuclear. So now we see that things, RFID, for example, which have very constrained requirement in terms of hardware, has already been used. So we need something to protect them, and one of them is lightweight block cipher. So the lightweight block ciphers has been in existence, as far as we know, since the year 2005. So before 2005, we have the AES. AES was published in the year 2000. Okay, so the earliest proposal, lightweight block cipher, is M-krypton. And then we have height, present, and so forth. And it's still an active area of research. Okay? And people are still proposing new lightweight block ciphers. And in 2012, the ISO IEC 29192, they published this, ISO IEC published this standard document that specifies present as one of the block ciphers in that standard. And also NSA, the National Security Agency, they also joined this research by proposing a cipher called Simon and Spec. So if you are interested, you can analyze Simon and Spec, which was published by the NSA. And it's open, anybody can download the specification. And also, I think this month or a few months from now, NIST is going to organize a workshop on lightweight crypto. So we see that the importance of lightweight cryptography. So it's still an active area of research. So when you work, you start with a focus only on lightweight block ciphers, but some may apply to other areas as well. But in lightweight block cipher, these are the three trade-offs that you would normally encounter. So you have, when you design a lightweight block cipher, you need to balance between these three main points. The first one is the security, and then the performance and the area requirement. So for instance, in terms of key length, okay, if you have key length, for example, 56 bits, yeah, it is low cost. You need less area to store 56-bit key, but of course, the security, you have less security compared to if you use, for example, 256-bit. If you use 256-bit key, yeah, you have higher security, but you need more space to store those keys. Okay? And then the trade-off between security and performance. In block cipher, we have a parameter which we call round, number of rounds. I will explain about this later in the talk. Basically, the rounds, how many you iterate the function. Okay? You can have less rounds, for example, 16 rounds. Yeah, you can have very good performance, but then you have less security. Okay? And vice versa, if you have more rounds, in general, you have higher security, but then your cipher is slow. Okay? So in terms of performance and area, you can have a serial architecture implementation, which saves you some cost, but it's not very fast. Or you can have a parallel architecture. Yeah, it's very fast, but then you need some area, because you need to do the parallelism. So these three things, you will see this figure throughout my talk today. This is the figure of encryption and decryption, which I showed you earlier. So these are some of the design issues. So when you design a lightweight block cipher, you need to think of the input block size. How big should you accept? Okay, and then the key size. Typical key size, we have 80 bits, 96 bits, up to 1 to 8 bits. And then the key schedule. So you have your key. Before you insert it into your encryption function, you need to process your key. So the issue is what kind of key schedule should you have? Should you have a minimal key schedule, or should you even remove the key schedule altogether? And then the structure. We can choose from SPN, Substitution Permutation Network, or FISTL. These two are some of the popular structures that you can use. And inside this structure, we have a component called the S box. S stands for substitution. You need to decide whether you want to use an S box or not. Okay. And then inside the structure, we also have a diffusion component. Okay. You need to decide whether you use bit-based or word-based, whether you want to use MPS. And then, number of rounds. So how many rounds, how many times that you need to iterate your function. Those are some of the issues that you need to think of. And whether the decryption function itself is required. Okay, in this figure, you need an encryption function and a decryption function. But can we decrypt without the decryption function? Can anybody answer? If I remove this, can I still decrypt my ciphertext? Meaning that I only have just one encryption function. Without inversing, just you can only go through this way.
Or no encryption. No encryption. No encryption. Force. No force on it.
Million. Actually, we can. I'll show you how. You can actually remove this, but still you can decrypt. Okay. For example, we can use, like I mentioned, mode of operation. Okay. So a block, this one line is about 8 bytes or 16 bytes. So if you have more than that, you need a mode of operation. So one of them is CBC. So this is CBC, I think most of you know. So to encrypt, this is the encryption, and this is how decryption looks like. So if you use CBC, you need the decryption function. So this D from the previous figure, here you need to have this. Okay? However, if you use counter mode, okay, counter mode, the encryption and decryption is the same thing. So you don't need the decryption function. So if you use CBC, you need to have encryption and decryption function. So that consumes like maybe double the space, right? So if you use counter, you only need to implement the encryption function only. So you can save some space when you implement in devices which are the resources are very limited. So those are the issues of mode of operation, which mode that you want to use, implement in your system.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it a pseudo-random function in the counter? Counter, is it the pseudo-random function?
Counter, actually, you have a nonce, and then the next is your counter, and then you maybe +1, something like +1, +2. So this one is maybe fixed number, and then you just add.
Yes.
Yeah. If you show that you can break it, then yeah.
Is it people using that things?
Counter mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a good block cipher, okay, it's very simple, right? You just increment the counter by 1. If you have a strong block cipher, the relation between this output and this output should not be, easily related. So if you, this is like, assume this is just 1 bit difference. So the output should, half of the output bits should change. So you should not get any obvious relationship between those. Okay, so we have looked at the issue of mode of operation, and then now the input block size and the key size. In the literature, the typical block size that they use is 64 bits. But there are also ciphers which propose the use of 32, 48, and even 96 bits. So why the different sizes? Actually, it depends on your application as well, because the 96 bit is a bit odd. But one of the cipher that proposed this 96 bit block size is called sorry, I forgot the name. But it is used to encrypt EPC code, EPC barcode. So the size of that barcode is 96 bits. So it's tailored for such application. And then the key size, in the literature, they propose the use of 80-bit key size. But there are other proposals that propose the use of lower key size, like 64-bit. And even some propose up to 1 to 8 bits. So this all depends on your application and also how long you think the information would be valuable. Okay, for example, when you do online banking, you receive and you want to transfer to somebody else, you receive a tag, right? You need to enter your tag. But once you have entered the tag is, of no use, So you need to protect the tag for a very limited time. So after that, anyone can get your tag because it's of no use. So there's no use of using, for example, 256-bit key to encrypt such information which have very limited value. Okay, so those are some of the issues that you need to have in mind. So back to the 3 design trade-off. When you have a smaller key, you can save some space, so it's low cost, but the security is low. But you have a higher key, for example, up to 256 bit, you have a higher security, but you need some space to store those keys. And if you remember before, I mentioned about GE. So in the literature, to store 1 bit, it requires about 6 GE. So for example, if you use an 80-bit key, so you need about 480 GEs just to store your secret key. Okay, so next is whether you want to have a key schedule or not. Okay, so how this fit into this perspective? So you remember this figure, so we have a key and then we have the encryption function. So actually before it goes into this encryption function, you need to process it. Okay. So you have your key. The processing part, we call it the key scheduling algorithm. So the function of this key scheduling algorithm is to process this key to produce these subkeys. So here we have R subkeys. Those subkeys will be used in all this F function. We call this round function. So here we have R round function, and you need to decide whether you really need a key scheduling algorithm or a very minimal key schedule algorithm. Why? Because if you do some processing, it also incurs costs in terms of GE. And example is as follows. So for example, if you use NOT gate, it occupies about 0.67 GEs. If you use XOR, XOR is about 2.67 GEs. So if you have a 64-bit block, and then you want to XOR with something, a 64-bit value, that occupies about 171 GEs. And also we have sequential logic, flip-flops, and also you can also use bit permutation. So bit permutation in hardware is very cheap because it is just wiring, so you don't need any special components to do this. However, bit permutation in software is very expensive. So in some proposals, they use this bit permutation, but if you implement it in software, it's very slow because bit permutation is you need to do some pre-processing to do bit processing in C, for example. Okay, so you need to decide whether you want to process the key, how you want to process the key, and then for the cipher itself, you need to decide on a structure, whether to use SPN, Feistel, or LSR. So this is a Feistel structure. So it's a very simple structure. So you have your input block. So you divide it into two. Okay, the left half goes here, the right half goes here, and then the left half goes to this F function, and then you XOR with the right half, and then you swap. So this is one round of Feistel. But if you see this part here, it's not processed at all. Okay, so you only process just one part of it. So one round of Feistel, of course, is not enough. At least you need to do 2 rounds. Okay. For example, this is a 2-round Feistel. So you put one Feistel on top of the other. So here you see this left side, which now becomes the right side, has already been updated. And then this is just why do we need this? Does anybody knows why do we need the last right. So you can use the same structure without modifying anything, except that of course you need to reorder this. But normally these Fs are all the same. The only difference is just the key. So the advantage of using a Feistel structure is that encryption, decryption use the same circuit. So you don't, in hardware, you don't need to implement more than one circuit. Only one circuit to do both encryption and decryption. And the other structure, SPN. So this is an example of an SPN. S stands for substitution, P permutation. So basically, okay, each line here represents 1 bit. Okay, 1 bit. So we see this is the substitution part. This S is basically, you can think of it's like a bijective function. So this S box receives 4-bit input, okay, because you have four lines here and 4-bit output. So this is what we call a 4x4 S box. 4-bit input, 4-bit output. And the part in the down here is the permutation function, or permutation part of this P here. So the permutation part provides diffusion. So you just, in this example, this is just an example. We have different diffusion function as well. It is just, you just move this bit here, so this is only bit permutation. This is 1 round. So this is an example of a 2-round SPN. Okay, this is 1 round, so this is the 2nd round. So how do we decrypt? How do you decrypt? like this. You just move. Since, okay, this is your input. Input goes here. This is your output, right? So to decrypt, you need to insert your ciphertext here, and then basically you just switch the places. But is this correct? Oh, so it's actually it's not correct. Okay. Why? Because you see, the output goes out of S5. Okay, it goes here and here and here and here. But when you enter, you should invert. You should invert this operation first. Okay? So this is wrong, and this is also wrong as well because you need to invert. So this is the correct one. So you need to invert the permutation part first, and then go to the S-box. And also the S-box, you need to implement its inverse. Okay, so this is S5, this is S5 inverse. So if you use SBN, yeah, you need to have two different circuits, one for encryption, one for decryption. And if you see, one round of SBN is actually 2 rounds of FISTL. To do 1 round of SBN, in SBN, all bits are processed. In FISTL, 1 round, the left part is not processed, so you need 2 rounds. Okay. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages of these two structures. I won't go into LFSR, but these two I think is enough to illustrate why some people choose SBN and why some people choose FISTL. Okay, so here you see this is 2 rounds, right? You repeat this 2 times. So how many rounds is sufficient? The rule of thumb, in general, more rounds means more security. Okay. So I show you back this figure. So this is how many rounds that you need to iterate. So you have R subkeys. So you have basically you have R rounds. Okay. Some ciphers they have I think 2, 5, 6 rounds. It depends on how your round function looks like. If it's very weak, so you need to repeat it many times. If it's already strong, then you don't need to repeat it as many times.
So for the pollution resistant, right? You increase the round, it means the probability to be pollution is quite increasing, right?
Collision, you mean collision? Okay. Collision is property for hash function. Because in a block cipher,
between block, right? The output almost similar. Because you have more, so there is probability that they're repeating the same output from the previous round.
if you have more rounds.
Yeah.
If you have more rounds, basically you diffuse the input more.
Repeat back.
You mean to get back the same?
Yeah.
That one is handled by, you see here, the key mixing. So we use different keys in each round. So the probability of getting the same input is very, very low.
It's mean a pseudo random key, right? Every time every block is different.
Yeah. So you use
for every cycle is different, right?
Yes, different.
Yes.
Okay, so the rounds determine how secure your cipher is in general. Okay. So back to this trade-off thing. So the last round, yeah, you can run it very fast. For example, if you have only 2 rounds, it's very fast, right? If you have maybe 100 rounds, it slows down your cipher, but in general, it's more secure. Okay, S-box, whether we want to use S-box or not, if you don't want to use S-box, we have another method called ARX, addition, rotation, and XOR, actually, ARX. Meaning you do away with the S-box, you don't use S-box, you just use these 3 the combination of modulo addition, rotation, and XOR to provide non-linearity. But I will be focusing only on S box. So use single or multiple. The S box size, we have various sizes: 3x3, meaning 3-bit input, 3-bit output. That is, use 4x4, 8x8. In general, the smaller the size, the less area that it occupies. So where does the S box sit? The S box sits inside this round function, and I've also shown you an example. Here is another example. This is actually the round function of the present block cipher. So here is each line represents 1 bit. So this is a 4x4 S box, and then you repeat the S box 16 times. You use the same S box. You can use different S box if you want, but it incurs cost. Okay? So for present, the designers, they opt for a 4x4 S box, and then they just repeat it, use it 16 times. So this is an SPN. Okay. So the S box that they use, as I mentioned before, it occupies space. So for example, present, the one that I showed you just now, is about 22 GE to implement the S box. Dash takes about 120 an optimized AES box, 233 GE. And if you use a lookup table, it occupies about 1000 GE. Okay, so in lightweight devices, of course, we want to minimize the area. So the smaller the size, that's better.
About S box, do you need to have a balance 4x4? Is there other than that? 4 times, maybe 3 input 4 going out 3, is it?
And that's they use a 6x4 S box. It depends on in lightweight, normally they use a 4x4 S box. The odd size that we encounter is a 3x3. So that's a bit odd. They use a 3-bit input, 3-bit output. But normally they opt for 4x4 S box. Okay, so the S box is a nonlinear component. So now we go into the diffusion part. So back to present. Okay, so in present, this is the permutation part. So this is the S box that we have seen just now. So this is the permutation part. So it only involves just wiring, just shift the bits here and there. It's generally preferable in hardware because it's 0 GE. It's just wiring. You don't need any processing. So it's very cheap in hardware. However, in software, it's not really efficient. This is another example. This is a round function of the Prince block cipher. So, can you see where the lines go? So basically, this is a bit more complicated than before. So in Prince, this is the diffusion part. So basically what they do, at each output, they take 3 different inputs, and then they XOR them together. So that causes two XOR operation, right? 2 XOR operation per output bit. So roughly for this part, you occupy about 85 GE. So compared to the previous one, we have 0 GE. So here you have 85 GE. But you see, we need to have a balance. For present, for Prince, they only need to repeat this 12 times, okay? Because they have a strong diffusion function. For present, they need to repeat this whole thing 31 times. Why? Because they have a relatively weak permutation part. So that's some of the trade-off that we also need to consider. Yeah, your permutation is very simple, but you need to, do a lot of, you need to repeat.
It's heavy, doctor, because zero. Zero. You repeat many times, times zero.
For Harvard.
Yeah, because still zero, it's less. If you repeat many times,
Yeah.
maybe the double, right?
Yes.
Still less.
In terms of area, yes, but in terms of security, you need to have more rounds. Here you need to repeat it 31 times.
But still less.
The area, yes.
Still less. Compare this thing. If you repeat, let's make 31, for example, G.
Yeah, the area is...
Previous one, more than that.
Yeah, okay. You have 0 GE here, okay, that's true. In terms of area, it occupies a very small area. But if you just compare to this one round and this one round, this round is, in general, it's more secure than the previous, this one. That's why you need to repeat this 31 times, although it's very small, but you need to repeat it 31 times. This one, you only need to repeat it 12 times.
But this is when you get, right?
Yeah, in terms of area.
This the previous one, less area. It doesn't matter if you repeat many times, but it's still less area.
Okay, less area.
For the size, right?
No power consumption
Yeah.
because of that. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. Okay, here, in general, 12 rounds, right? 12 rounds compared to 31 rounds, 12 rounds is less than 31 rounds.
If you compare with frequency, don't mean yes time, right? But we say this RFID very small one, right? Low power. Gate.
So you're saying present is better than Prince? Are you saying that? Yeah, it's I'm talking about just the security part. Okay, meaning that small area, but you need to repeat it more than if you have this for security reasons. Okay. Okay. Right. So, in general, we have covered these three points here: security, area, and performance. But I do away with this. Okay, even if you have a very, very fast cipher, or a cipher that has a very small hardware footprint, you still, in crypto, you still need to focus on the security part. Okay, you can't have a very fast cipher. I have a very fast cipher, but in terms of security analysis, none or very little. You have a very bombastic cipher that has very small footprint, but if you don't have the security analysis, then it's no use at all, because a block cipher is supposed to provide confidentiality. That's what we should remember. And some of the techniques that you need to do the analysis, some of them are here. Differential, linear, and possible differential, all these things. So when you propose a new cipher, at least you need to do analysis, this analysis on your cipher. Okay. Yeah, the entire is it's good if you can do that. But the minimum is differential and linear cryptanalysis. You can't run away with this. So to summarize, so this talk is about lightweight block cipher. So it's encryption for very resource-constrained devices. And during the design and analysis, these are the three trade-offs that we encounter: security, area, and performance. So we need to have a balance, the right balance between security and low cost and performance. And you need to remember that in lightweight crypto, it really depends on your application. Some cipher may not be suitable for your application. Some cipher, is really suited for some application. So it's there's no one cipher that dominates all. So it depends on how you want to use it. The level of security that you want. So, but the important part is the security part, it has to be a very strong cipher. So, any question? Before that, if you want to download the slides, I put it on my website, and there's also some other stuff there that you may find interesting. So, any question?
Saya hilang.
For the medical sensor, right? Medical, you put it to the body, right? Lightweight. Do you have found anything that for the biometric something for medical part? Lightweight encryption that remains inside the body.
You mean like
Sensor that put inside the human body?
Oh, inside the human body.
Yeah, which kind of the existing lightweight scripts that is using?
As far as I know, I haven't been looking into that in those areas. Only the one that I showed you before.
RFID.
Yeah, RFID. Normally used for asset tagging. And also, I foresee maybe in the future, if these RFID tags, are implemented in, when you go to maybe Tesco or Giant, all of the products have this RFID tag. And when you want to pay, you just, push your trolley into this one, console. It will automatically, count how many that you have purchased and also how many it costs, and it will automatically, deduct into your account or something like that. So, because, in RFID, you don't need line of sight. Right? For barcode, you need the line of sight, to scan the code. RFID, you don't need that. So you can just push your trolley, everything is calculated for you. And there are some security issues in that. Maybe you are overcharged, maybe the GST is 10% at the time. So,
how about the Mimos staff ID, right? Because they can touch and go everywhere. Do you have implement security there?
I have no idea.
Maybe you can try to Mimos, right? I know about RFID, right? Because I know I did some NFC, I can detect all the people that I see. You can get the number. So this means if you have number, you just copy the number, I go to the door, I can open the door. So just give a number around 6 byte. NFC, I think. And then they for the smart card reader.
So to duplicate whatever is inside.
Yeah, maybe that way they can put a couple gates or GEs or you can try that. Into the group.
Okay.
For the Mimo stack.
Mimo stack.
So the areas of research to study the security on one of the slides. In your professional opinion, we have the personnel in Malaysia that we can refer to each segment. Can you identify the persons that we can talk to?
Okay, to go into this area, I can name a few names. One of them, I think the most popular is Dr. Professor Raphael Fan from MMU. He's, I don't know if you know this, but he's one of the co-designer of Blake, right? One of the candidates for SHA-3. And also he's been in this area for a while. And you in Malaysia or?
Yes, something for students who are interested, they can go and ask questions.
On my website, I have actually listed organizations and crypto groups actually that do research in crypto in general, but not on lightweight. On lightweight, I think the active ones is our neighbor Singapore in NTU, Nanyang Technological University. They also have a strong group there. I can name names Excel, Washman, Jian Go, Thomas Pavin.
In other words, we need to go broad for these things. Right?
Yeah.
Is it a primitive one that you can do not just somebody using the lightweight, but the primitive one, right? Doing
the low cipher hash function, yes.
But I saw that some of in the particular design doing something, right? They have a lot of master and PhD students graduate and doing block cipher. Pemahaman student ada?
Lightweight or?
So tapi dia say block cipher.
Okay, so.
I think even stream cipher is like a block cipher with a very small block, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we just use stream cipher as a lightweight block cipher?
There's one proposal in Qatar. I don't know how you want to pronounce this, but the structure, this is a block cipher actually, but the structure resembles a stream cipher. Okay, why don't we just use a stream cipher, right? For one, stream cipher, the block size is small. Okay, and block cipher, maybe you need to handle more blocks in one time. And also the security, based on my readings, the security of block cipher is more understood than the security of stream cipher, if I'm not mistaken. That's one of the reasons, they focus on block cipher, because we have stream ciphers that fit into these resource constrained devices, but some of them are actually been broken. So that's why in the block cipher world we don't have many broken primitives yet. So I think that's one of the reasons.
But having a variable length of the block cipher, right, transmit over the network is good for sensor. Sometimes you need to transmit data for the authentication bit. Sometimes you need to say one bit, I just alive. Right, that's why you need to have sometimes big and small. That optimize the power sensor.
Yeah.
Having a fixed one is good. You just want to say I'm alive 1 bit.
Yeah, it wastes some.
Because you need antenna, you need a lot of power. It's not about the block cycle but the antenna part. You can transmit the data. I think you need to around 30 decibel, 30 decibel to transmit around maybe 5 meters. This is a lot of what? Compare when you say about the gate and everything and power, but it's not that. Transmission is use a lot of power. That's why you transmit long time, but let's say you transmit more bit, that means you have a lot of power to transmit.
Yeah, but that doesn't address the issue, because transmission, regardless cipher or non-cipher,
But because
there
there
is
is no
reset
constraint environment, doctor.
No, the constraint environment is not with regards to the cipher, it's with regards to the hardware of the antenna. Because the antenna can transmit anything, so you don't put the blame on the cipher. You can transmit any video, movie or anything.
But the argument is
It's
that
nothing to do with the
to
cipher.
transmit 1 bit.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the analysis is doing.
But if you have a one cipher that variable, it's good. You can transmit variable.
Yeah, then you're saying that his cipher must compress also at the same time. Then it can only be good in your sense. But that doesn't exist. So you cannot have a cipher that compresses. You put in 64-bit outcomes, 30 bits, then that answer your question lah. Because
But when we talk about stream cipher, you can just transmit 1 bit, 2 bit, 4 bit. But block cipher, you cannot do that, right?
No, you can't.
That's my point lah.
no, but at the end of the day, the number of bits is the same.
Yeah, but when you say 1 bit, you say I'm live, but I need to transmit another 1 bit up to 10 seconds, saying I'm live again.
But you can use the block cipher encounter mode, where you just send just 1 bit, and at the end
So
you.
that's made a solution because you want to keep alive, right? Saying that my sensor is alive every 10 seconds.
Or you just want to say that sensor is alive. Then you encrypt 1 bit.
Yeah, because block cipher normally, it's like.
Okay. So they encrypt 1 bit, so there's no
But
point.
people
So you don't have to encrypt
people
it.
can